Hello and welcome to episode 49 of I'm Fine, a chat between myself, Damo, and mega muesli maker, Mark. Another little bit of alliteration for you.
Giant granola maker.
Oh, it's good. It is banging. You know, if all else fails, just do that. Mark's
Have you got
muesli.
some left?
Mark's muesli. I can see it now. No, I ate it all.
Oh, do you want more?
Yeah, keep it coming. No, I feel bad asking. I would buy it off you.
No, I'll make you
Talking
more
about subscription models. Yeah, I'd pay. What would I pay for that?
I saw in Waitrose not long ago a granola that's basically in a brown paper bag to make it look artisan.
Yeah.
And it's almost identical ingredients to mine. And it's like £5 for a small bag. But because it's in a paper bag, everyone was buying it.
I'd probably buy yours off you for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Change the tune.
Diversification.
This is a chat around the subjects of health, wealth, well-being, fitness, sports, science, and matters of the heart. You know, the stuff that really twangs the ventricle strings. Like that. Don't look at me like that. We're all work in progress, and this podcast is no exception. In short, it's a poke at our perfectly imperfect lives, and if we can make just one person feel like they're not alone in all this madness.
Or 1p.
Hey? 1p?
Yeah.
Did I say what?
Well, when you missaid person, it sounded, we can make 1p in this pod.
It's good. I was just thinking I'm going to edit this out, but I'm not now.
Saved by the bell.
Yeah. I don't know, some about madness, some about our work here is done, blah, 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 blah. If you haven't already subscribed to us, then please do. And if you like what you hear, spread the word. We'd love to hear from you. Send your stuff in at imfinecast@gmail.com and find us on the socials at imfinecast. So coming up, got some catch-ups. Why are you looking at me sideways?
That's all right. I never quite know what you're going to do. So we got the dates of my
Literally
US
the same,
tour.
everything. Yeah, your primaries.
Yeah.
And your fundraising. We could do some fundraisers, couldn't we?
I've actually got, in the next bit to come up, I'm going to reference one American state in every pod until November 2024. I've already got one lined up for today.
Okay, well, America is 20% of our listenership, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're representing. In Work-Life Ballet, as I said in the last pod, we got a lovely chat with Joe that I had, all about finding your centre. So that'll be coming up. It is marvellous, if I do say so. Off the back of the chat with Joe, we're going to have a little sniff around deconditioning and pattern interrupt, which kind of came up in our chat, which was it's great, isn't it? There's all these things, hasn't there? There's loads of stuff.
There's loads of stuff.
It just goes from one and it feels really nice at the moment. And I know we're coming up to our 50th ep. Don't want to build that up too much. No. There might be some bunting. We might have some bunting, mightn't we?
We've never used my bunting quote that you really like. We'll nip that in again.
Okay, I can't remember it. Okay, you're not going to tell us either.
No.
I'm
going to save it. Okay.
We could do some commemorative tea towels, maybe for our 50th. What do you think?
Those commemorative tea towels with that you used to get from infant school, where each pupil would do a picture of themselves.
And you put it on there.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of material that literally pushes the water around the dish rather than actually soaking it up.
Yeah.
All commemorative tea towels are utter shit, aren't they?
Yeah, they're shiny and stuff.
But is that the point of them? You're not meant to use them, which I think is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like having like a commemorative royal mug and having a hole in the bottom.
Well, because you're never going to use them.
Yeah. Well, it's the equivalent of having a tea towel that doesn't do the job.
Yeah.
Right? Riveting stuff as ever. How are you, Mark?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
Excellent. I'm very good, thank you. Brilliant. Let's move on. That never happens.
No. Well, moving on.
You always sit there going, well.
Do you mean in a metaphorical sense?
Yeah. Do you really mean how are you?
When you say how am I?
I was thinking, do we need to do some, I think I mentioned this yonks ago.
Go on.
Do we need to do some promo shots? Do we need to?
Of what?
Because we want to try and sell this pod, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're awful looking, right?
Okay. Where are you going with it?
Well, people don't know what we look like.
No.
We've had more listeners since you showed your lovely little face on that Instagram live. I'm just thinking there's just the potential, to put us out there a bit more. I mean, you could just be the face if you want. What?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, legit.
Yeah, okay.
It's personality is important, isn't it? We're literally personalities on this, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we don't ever show our faces.
No.
It's like some kind of weird.
Although I hadn't noticed it.
It might backfire horrendously.
Yeah. I hadn't noticed it, but somebody did a comment on one of your Insta stories. I think Sarah probably did the little red dot in your eye on the Insta
Oh,
story. I hadn't noticed
not notice
it
it the first
No.
because we called it Judgment Day.
Yeah, it's
You haven't
clever.
seen.
That's a film or something, is it?
Yes, Terminator.
Okay.
So you don't know what the dot's about?
No.
Right, but you thought it was clever.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
We got a shopping list there. What's that?
Okay. So I said I struggled to say because I do laugh. I do laugh.
What, contrary to
Everybody's opinion. No, I do. And although we've already said that this podcast is a mask for my melancholy, so this isn't the real me.
Right.
But
Did I know that?
yeah.
Go on.
So Amelia said to me, she said, I was trying to work out what made you laugh. And she said, I came up with two things. She said, but if you tell them to Damien, he's going to go like...
I love the way you use my full name, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, I might not have a full name. It's not like my full name, but
yeah, your name.
All of my first name.
Yeah. You use all of mine. It's only fair. So the two examples she gave, she said, if you tell him, he's just going to look at you and think you're a dick. So the two of them were... Shit, I've forgotten one of them. Anyway, the other one, which I can remember.
I'm looking at you like you're a dick.
I only had two things to remember. Why can't I remember? Anyway.
Hold on, you got a piece of paper. You literally have a piece of paper, look like you're about to read from it.
No, this has got jokes on it.
Right.
I'm going to show other things.
I didn't mean
that
to
make
jump
me
ahead.
laugh.
I just thought you might want to write the thing down so you don't forget such
I've remembered one of them. I've remembered 50%. So what it used to be is that one of my daughters was in being looked after by childcare, like a woman that was looking after school care.
Your test tube lady?
No.
Test tube baby lady.
So my youngest daughter was older now, and a person would pick her up from school,
right,
look after her for a little bit after school, then I'd go and pick her up.
Yeah, sure.
The person that provided the care for my child scared me so much, and I'm so much of an introvert, I would not speak to her or face her.
In what way? Like just
she had a tea towel over her shoulder that was like
commemorative one.
No, but not slippery because it never moved. Just the sheer way she opened the door and having this tea towel there, it almost looked like a weapon. So anyway, I didn't like collecting my daughter. So
you hired this woman, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, clearly terrified. So terrified. You didn't want to not give her the job.
What I would tend to do is take my eldest daughter. I think I must have either picked her up from school or just put her in the car and said, "You're coming with me to pick up your sister."
Yeah.
And when we got to the house, I would go, "Oh shit, there's nowhere to park. Can you just nip out and get your sister and I'll find somewhere to park?" And it was literally a deserted cul-de-sac. And we would do this every time. And that was hysterical. Okay. Like a lot of comedy is when it's repetitive, isn't it? Mm. And
we talked about regression, when things are difficult, or hostility.
Yes.
Back to Freud's
so
point.
This was exactly this. I'm trying to escape the person that I put in my child's care because she had a tea towel in a menacing manner. And so that was the ongoing joke. And that was like real sort of crying humour. That was for probably about 2 years.
Brilliant.
That was a standing joke. Yeah. And I think repetition is a very big thing, isn't it, in a lot of comedy. So what I thought
You really can't remember the other thing?
No. So what I thought was I was going to find something that occasionally would make me laugh. So I've trialled this on one or two people. And the response has been uproarious. Uproarious?
You're normally brilliant with your words.
You did a good one the other day, actually, I meant to say.
Your vocab is tremendous, I must say.
Is that a word? Okay. So
just you go with it.
This went from uproarious belly laughs to indifference. So what I'm going to do... No, between various... So I just trialled it variously.
Shall I say uproarious or indifference?
Yes, I've got
as my kind of.
No, you don't have to do it with your thumbs. I've got.
No, say it.
I've got it written out on boards. I want you to hold these two boards out. I'll just get them. Go. The boards. What's she like? Anyway, so just do it with the thumbs up or thumbs down.
You call her Cole for starters.
Yeah,
she isn't like that. She's coming now. Thanks, Colin.
Just leave them there, my love. I think I done well, did it? Right, so...
Why's she got a tea towel over her shoulder?
So I'm going to read these out, and I'm quite happy for you to not respond at all. I don't care whether you like them or not. We're just putting them out there. And as I say, one American
Just get on
state.
with it, for Christ's sake.
Okay. I'm going to do... So this is thanks to Bob Mortimer and Andy Dawson.
From Atletico Mint's podcast.
Atletico Mint's podcast. Great podcast. Really brilliant. So... I went to see a recruitment consultant. He said, "Have you considered voluntary work?" I said, "I wouldn't do it if you paid me." You don't have to put the thingy weed in after this, the sound effect.
I wouldn't be so
you better
harsh.
not. Here's the American reference. I burnt my Hawaiian pizza last night. I must use a lower heat.
Quite good. It's all in the delivery, to be fair, Mark.
I went to the zoo the other day. The only animal there was a dog. It was a Shih Tzu.
That's a good one, that one, yeah.
I wondered why the ball got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Then it hit me. This is my favourite, so no prejudice. But if this doesn't give a laugh, I'm not going to go to page 2. I think I've told you this one. A penguin walks into a bar. He says to the barman, "Have you seen my brother?" And the barman says, "I don't know. What does he look like?"
Look, I love a poo joke. I mean, these are just brilliant.
Here's my second favourite. I rank everything, don't I?
You don't have to just say them, right?
Went to the doctors the other day. She said, "You've got hypochondria." I said, "Oh no, not that as well." My dad has the heart of a lion and a lifetime ban from the zoo. 668, the neighbour of the beast. A man in a police interrogation room says, "I'm not saying a word without my lawyer present." Policeman says, "You are the lawyer." He says, "I know. Where's my present?" The good thing about these is you don't have to do the punchline because you're already there, aren't you?
Yeah.
Finally, I got sacked from a job at the bank today. An old lady came in and asked me to check her balance.
Pushed her over.
There.
It's only a couple of episodes too late, but it's what we needed in the
laughter special.
Yeah, that's good.
It's all about
Thank you.
timing.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. I just love the way you. I don't know any comedian that literally would kind of do some preamble to the show. It's like, just get on with it. That's good. You sent me a link to Golf on the Moon, didn't you? So it was Apollo 14th 50th anniversary, and Alan Shepard, he was a commander on NASA's Apollo 14 mission, took a golf club with him, like a telescopic golf club, and he wanted to hit a golf ball on the moon.
Well, he smuggled in something in a sock. This is where this is even more bollocks. He made a golf club. He didn't smuggle a golf club in. He made a golf club.
Yeah.
So he smuggled in the head of a golf club, and then
because when we were talking about this last time, you were talking about all the weight and extra stuff, and all these astronauts taking these things on.
I'm going to the moon. I'm going to smuggle something in a sock.
Yeah,
no. Anyway,
heavy bit of metal. Yeah.
So he took a golf club head and then fixed it to this handle.
Yeah, a 6-iron, just for golfists out there.
Yeah. Okay, so carry on.
I think there was the footage that was taken, the original footage that was taken in the studio.
Yeah.
He hit a golf ball.
Yeah.
I think at the time that they had no record of, well, they couldn't work out actually how far this golf ball had gone.
Yeah.
So I think some nerd in America has...
Oh, no, he's English, the guy that's done it.
Oh, okay. You can tell I've read this.
Yeah. He basically looks at photographs and then enlarges them and makes them bigger and better and brighter.
He's got some high-def ones.
Yeah.
And he's basically worked out how far Alan Shepard hit the ball.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite topical at the moment because Bryson DeChambeau, the American golfist, is one of the biggest hitters in the game. I don't know whether you've heard recently that because he's smashing the ball so far, like 400-yard drives, they're talking about changing, as they do in all sport, when someone gets really good. They're talking about...
Did that with javelin, didn't they?
Well, yeah.
The javelin was... They had a certain type of javelin. It was basically going to go outside the stadium. So, yeah.
Into the car park.
Yeah.
So Bryson DeChambeau, he's probably stacked, this bloke. I don't know if you've seen him, but he kind of one season he was like normal sized, and then came out the next season like he was, been on the old protein balls and lifting weights like you. So he's been smashing it. So it's quite topical at the moment because they're thinking about changing the clubs and stuff. But they said that if he was on the moon hitting a golf ball, in theory, with the reduced gravity on the moon, he could blast a ball 3.41 miles. Yeah. Pretty much the length of an 18-hole golf course. And the ball would have a hang time of 1 minute and 22 seconds. Yeah. So the question was, how far did Alan Shepard hit his golf ball?
Well, Alan Shepard did make a claim of how far his had gone, didn't he?
Yeah.
When he was asked, he said it went miles and miles.
Yeah. And they've actually looked at it.
Yeah.
And...
found the golf ball.
Yeah. They found it.
On the moon.
And The guy who did this said, we can now fairly accurately determine that ball number 1 travelled 24 yards and ball number 2 travelled 40 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, that's rubbish.
Yeah. But as somebody also said, that's quite good, because bearing in mind the suit he was wearing, the gloves he was wearing, it wasn't a proper golf club, and he couldn't have seen the ball in his spacesuit because you can't look down and see your feet. So he hit a ball he couldn't see.
Yeah.
So well done. But again, I'm going to the moon, love. What are you taking? Well, we've got
6 iron.
Yeah, and 2 golf balls. But don't tell anyone. So NASA has invested billions and billions, but I'm going to take a couple of golf balls, but I won't film how far they go or anything like that. But 50 years later, some guy in England will find my ball on the moon. It hasn't shifted. It hasn't got covered in dust. It's just lying there. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Although, on my presidential thing, I'm not going to deny the moon landing.
No, get it all out here.
Yeah.
And then you've got to toe the line when you start doing that.
Yeah. So if you are listening in America now,
this
is I'm just putting this out as devil's advocate.
Right. Okay. Sure. I reckon I could hit a ball further than 40 yards in that suit
with no gravity.
Yes. I could
So why did it only
kick it further than that?
Yeah. Or throw it. Why didn't he?
Why did he throw it? Because he took a golf club.
Well, also so he was the 5th on the moon. Dick Baldwin, who was the 6th, took a shot put and a javelin. And one of those big tyres that they use in the world's strongest man.
Did my eyes go as big as they felt when you were saying that?
And then those stone balls that they put on.
Yeah,
he took all of those. So here's a picture of Buzz Aldrin, allegedly. What I want you to do is to look at his left hand and then look at the shadow of his left hand. So his left hand looks as what?
Slightly bent.
Yeah, and it's a hand in a glove, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what does the shadow of his left hand look like?
Look like he's got something in his hand, like a tool.
Yeah.
Like a screwdriver.
Does the shadow have any bearing on his hand?
Not really.
No. Okay. Just putting that out there. I'm open on this. I'm open either way.
Yeah, sure.
4.
How's your silver stock? Have you checked it?
No. Silver, well, it was on the rise. I sent you a graph.
There was a rush, wasn't there?
Gold rush.
You better get your wash bag out.
Yeah.
Count that bad boy up and see what you got. Honestly, I reckon you should.
I wonder if the silver in my wash bag is counting as money laundering.
Again, 2 episodes too late, but that's brilliant.
But it's all about timing.
So, Work-Life Ballet. I had a lovely chat with Joe this morning. We've been wanting to kind of turn our coffee and cake chat into a bit of a pod thing. I knew it'd be good, and it went a little something like this. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Damo.
You all right?
Yeah, no, I'm good this morning. I'm good.
Good. This is the first time we've talked like this, I think, actually, on a computer. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yes, this is the first time.
We try and do face-to-face, don't we?
Always.
By the guidelines. We're too legit to quit, aren't we? So we haven't felt the need to do this on the internet. But thanks for joining the pod. We've mentioned you in the pod, as you're aware, because you've heard the bits where you've been mentioned. So you are Joe, the person I go and have coffee and cake with on a Saturday morning.
That's an ace way to go down in the annals of history. The person that you go and have coffee and cake with, I reckon that's an accolade.
Yeah. And I'm also the drummer in your band. I think that's the best way of putting it, isn't it?
Well, I say you're my drummer, but that feels... Yeah.
I think that's fair. We all know the power hierarchy in the band, so that's absolutely fine. You're the boss. Well, your name's in our band title, so you're pretty much the boss.
Then that says it all, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think so. When we're in the coffee shop and we're talking, there's something that kind of came up that I was kind of really interested in, and we kind of dug about it a bit deeper, but I've just been so desperate to kind of have a bit of a chat around that and try and also hit the record button. And I think it was just a simple phrase that you said to me once, which was, I'm working on finding my center, or I found my center and I'm not always there, and then I'm kind of working on getting there, kind of, so it felt like there was a place, and I was just that whole kind of language of center just kind of, I've looked it up subsequently, and there's lots of stuff around yoga and meditation and mindfulness and stuff, which obviously fits in perfectly with what we talk about on the pod. But I was kind of interested in it being a place, which I imagine we'll get onto this, but be different for everybody, but a place you can one, identify, and two, try and get to. And that just kind of, my mind just went racing. And
I think that knowing what you did with Mark and the conversations that you were having when we were sat and talking and after we'd met, it sort of came into my mind and yours at the same time. And that's one of the things that I've learned through this process, is to pick up on those signals. If there's something that ignites in you, it is that sort of journey to on that point, and listen to those things that come up personally for you. So that is like it in action. But one of the things that we were trying to sort of crystallize is a little bit and it is only one person's sort of journey through it, is what brings about that shift in orientation to your own life. And that was where it sort of started for me, was this notion that it was a journey that began with something that led me to understand I had a center at all.
Yeah.
You know, that I had a sense of self, that I had a center from which to orientate myself to the circumstances around me, the people around me, the narratives that we hold as a society. Suddenly I wasn't embroiled within them, but sort of was able to orientate myself from my own point of view, looking at them. Yeah. And we were sort of trying to find, well, what is that process? How does it start? Or did it start for me? You know, because I think it's a very individual by its sheer nature.
Yeah.
Evolution in terms of the way we see the world. And I believe it to be something that lots and lots of people are going through because of the current circumstances in which we find ourselves.
Yeah.
I think it's slowed a lot of people down, and maybe that process is happening for others as well.
Yeah, I was going to say there's an element of, do you find yourself, I guess, there by accident or design? I mean, it could be both. It could be little bits of all of that, can it? But I think at the moment, everybody is, like you said, it was also something we talk a lot about, which is time and taking time. And I think people have just had to take time because they've kind of been forced to. So maybe that's, kind of, and I guess in a pressure cooker environment, everyone's just had to take a good old look at themselves and others, right? And I think the accidental bit, you can find yourself stepping out of your self and all the constraints you talk about. I guess it's like classic a good old look at yourself, isn't it? Broadly, I'm not kind of minimizing that, but very quickly, just to go back, when we met, when I first became the drummer in your band, when you invited me to an audition, and you sat there and raised your thumb in the upright position, and I got the gig. We then obviously, I didn't know you before then, but we then started talking, and I think over time, for me, we're of a similar age. I've never asked your age because I'm a gentleman, but we are of a similar age. And there's that bit of I'm
very appreciative of your gentlemanly status on that.
So there was that, as we started talking, and kind of finding, as anyone does in a relationship, you kind of you poke a little bit and you see how far you can go, don't you? And kind of I might rephrase that. You talk. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, keep this. This is a family show. I think. I don't know. No, there's an element of finding boundaries, isn't there, with any kind of relationship, social kind of function. And I guess I had that kind of feeling that I was a certain way down mine journey, I guess, for want of a better word. You were saying stuff like, "God, that sounds really familiar," and I thought I was a long way down, and everyone had cracked it like years ago, and it felt like I don't know, you're kind of coming into your late 40s and early your late 20s and early 30s for you. No, we're coming into late 30s, early 40s, and I don't know whether, and this is a little bit of a project of mine. I've been trying to see whether that is common in lots of people, whether there's a certain time in your life where you've done the career, a bit of family stuff, and you kind of go, hold on a minute, I used to like all these things, and this is the kind of things I used to do. You know what I mean? Those kind of, it felt like there's a kind of a time in our lives, and I think a lot of people's lives, where you kind of start to question a few things, don't you? You start to go, actually, is that, or is that just the way it's been forever, or for a period of time?
It's really interesting, Damo, because I think there are very many books written out there that you might discover, come to read yourself once you make that step. So it's lots, like you say, there are lots of people that have already sort of jumped on this bus or been pushed, and and there are lots of thoughts about time in life, when it happens, why it happens. And I think it's very individual, but there is this kind of pressure cooker situation in your late 30s, early 40s, when you seemingly have possibly accrued many of the things that our social constructs or narratives within our society tell us we should have, could have, may have done.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point, and it's almost like a steady realization that something's amiss.
Yeah.
And there's a disquiet, and well, this is, sort of, we're getting onto a bit of my journey now, but I don't think it's a unique one. I had, I was married. I have 3 children. We had a house. We had, but there was this, and I asked a couple of people. I said, I'm not quite sure about this. This, something feels weird for me. I can't access joy. That was the only thing I could say, is that I felt flat. So I felt, this is all in hindsight, of course, I think. I felt something was missing or something. Yeah, I was seeking something, but I had no idea what it was, and I couldn't galvanize it. And the people that I'd spoken to sort of couldn't really tell me. And I went to my grandmother, who's a wise old bird, and I'd spoken to my auntie, who I really love her energy. And so I'd started there, and am I going to get my joy back? Really was the question I was asking. I felt tired.
Was that just off your own steam? You just kind of, I guess, curious. Was that just, it's something kick that off?
Yes. So I had sort of pinpointed something, but I really didn't know what, or where it was going. I just kind of wanted to feel a bit of energy and a bit of your those levels back again, where I felt enthused or inspired, or and I just didn't. And I had all this wonderful thing in my life, a lovely partner, and I had beautiful children, and I just what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And then boom, an interaction happened out of the blue. I wouldn't say I was looking for it. It certainly took my breath away. And suddenly all the things that I felt I knew, that were part of my identity, that were my givens, those things that are our assumptions at a certain point in life, as things that are givens, they're not even questioned. Suddenly everything kind of fell apart, all those assumptions, and I began to need to question everything. I could not go there, because something so significant had sort of blown my capacity to understand myself and the world and my position in it. Suddenly was completely wrecked. And actually it was a very dark time, and probably for about a year, 18 months, I struggled just within myself to even grasp. And I don't know how many people would have known, because I was very good at continuing to be the person that I had been up until that point. But I remember writing, and that's when I began my writing journey, actually. I had to do something to process it. I was drawn to write. I tried poetry, but I'm not particularly good at that, actually. But I write now sort of stream of consciousness stuff, which has been a huge kind of evolutionary self-development tool for me. But I remember writing about the shrapnel of my mind. I imagined all these parts of my mind just exploding everywhere, in the process of gathering those up and trying to make sense of who I was now, because I knew I wasn't the same, and trying to fit these pieces of myself back together that had been so changed by something explosive that I couldn't do it. So I had to go, what now? Well, what is this? Who am I? What does this mean? If all of this is no longer so, or doesn't make sense anymore, or I'm no longer that person entirely, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
There were several things that happened at once, probably because I was looking for it. So some of it was talking therapy. So I engaged a psychotherapist who's been incredibly helpful. I think I lucked in really well with who I managed to manifest at that point in my life. Yeah. And I read inspirational stories, people who had their own journey. It was mainly and their own orientation to our world that was different from mine, because I was looking for something to make sense of the fact that I couldn't orientate myself to my own life in the same way anymore.
Yeah.
That was a lot of kind of information. I knew it would all come out like that.
No, it's good. And I'm just writing down furiously. I'm going, oh my God, there's, another five episodes to get all this across. But it's great. No, but I think the immediate thing that comes to mind before I talk about kind of, I guess, frame of reference. Okay, frame of reference comes to mind, and when you talk about orientation and kind of infrastructure and things, but I'll come to that in a minute. But I'm not amazed by this because I know what you're like, and for anyone who's listening to this, I'm trying to join up the way you've kind of approached it. So one that kind of, you went and asked questions, which I think sounds very simple, but is a really difficult thing to do. You then kind of had that realization moment, but also then you started to write and you started to read. I would imagine there's again gradations we also talk about on this podcast. There's lots of ways anyone would and does handle this. Some people just go into the fetal position and cry.
Well, and I did at times, and it was a process, and it was almost a case of having to ask the questions, having to seek the tools, having to make some sense of it, because the alternative was just to stay in a fetal position of not. And I mean, I've heard it referred to now, long dark night of the soul, now I'm in a different space.
But you did that without those inspirational words, right? You kind of, you found an outlet, you found is this anything to, would you say because of your musicality, does that help? I mean, you're a singer, you're a performer, that's your expression, that's your kind, does that come into play?
That's a great thing to highlight, I think, Damo, and has become a big theme for me and for others, I think, over this last bit of time. And that is that in order to reacquaint ourselves with ourselves, we seek those things that come from our creative self. So yes, I began to spend a lot more time in the natural world. I took up wild swimming. I've always been a swimmer, so that wasn't a big jump, but wild swimming, running off-road, woodland stuff, being in contact with nature, singing, which had always been an element in my life, singing and performing, but really actually to open that up. And it was like I was taking elements of myself to firstly acquaint myself with who I was, then create strong bonds with that, and then begin to trust myself. So those were tools that came from within me, stuff I already had, stuff I was revisiting, to remember where I resided, where home was for me. So they were all these. I've heard it referred to wonderfully, actually, in a book by Jill Edwards. It was written 30 years ago, but she talks about how these tools are not the moon itself, but the finger pointing to the moon. If we say that our self-actualization is a moon, is an object which we desire to understand or reach for or meet. And so the band was an amazing place for me to do that, to build my confidence, to show who I was, to show up, So creating, being our own creatorship keeps us developing, evolving ourself, because it comes from within us. As you'll ask any artist, any writer, anybody who's involved in any aspect of creating. And sometimes that can be a teacher. They're creating a space where knowledge and exploration happens. They're creating something, we all have it in us. And I think that's a very powerful route to that self-actualization.
Yeah, that's going to be my point. My point was kind of not everybody might feel that they have those outlets, any one of those outlets. I mean, you just listed a load, which is amazing, and it's enriching, and it's very rounded, isn't it? And we had a chat not so long back about creativity on the pod, and Mark will go, I'm not creative, I can't draw, and I'm going, you're really creative, because in your work and when training me, you're very creative and analytical, and so my belief is that everybody has that ability somehow to be creative. You almost have to be to survive anything. And going back to the old saber-toothed tiger analogy, you had to be creative to think your way out of that kind of shit to survive. So, but I was just trying to kind of round that bit off in that I think everybody has that ability. They may not have that range of outlets, but even one of those would be incredibly powerful, wouldn't it, for someone to try and orientate themselves?
Well, the whole point is that they have their own Damo. That exactly what you said is that we are unique, and there may be themes, there may be things that connect us, similarities and so on, but ultimately we're unique, and part of our journey is figuring out how we want to show up, because that ultimately is our sort of gift to our existence and to the people around us and to our evolution of our humanity or our world, is to turn up presenting the gifts that we uniquely have. and everybody has them. And as a society, to value that with some kind of equanimity, some kind of equality, is an exciting step that I think humanity is starting to play with.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another past entirely, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
I feel it's got so much hope and potential. I get so excited about potential when you drop judgment, when you drop limitation, when you stop preconceiving what you're capable of and completely open yourself and embrace the world. It's a very freeing sensation. But it didn't come easy. I think I don't want to make it sound like,
No, it
like
doesn't.
that. It just happened because it didn't.
And I guess none of the good stuff does. You mentioned the word home there, which is also the kind of thing I had written down, which is, the idea of centre and home. Is there any difference? I guess what am I trying to ask? Reframe all those words into an appropriate question for me, Jo, please.
Thank you for the question, because I think it's a really good thing to highlight, is that terminology can be quite powerful and mean different things. To have a notion of it, some way of identifying it, can sometimes help engage you or manifest it. So home was actually a term that I came across in a book that I read sort of fairly, at the beginning of all of this, called Women Who Run with the Wolves, because it was centered around a little bit about being a woman and finding my voice, because I'd been brought up in the patriarchy and had a very strong and dominant father. And so it was about that. So that was a really good place to start. But she talked about women finding home. Right. And so that was a word that I picked up on. For me, it's evolved to be a bit more personal, and I call it my center. And I know that that's not unique. Other people call it that too. Center means the point around which my experience of being a human being is anchored. You could use home, but it's morphed for me. Home was sort of a term that I came across through another author, really.
You've mentioned that book before. How influential was it? Do you go, well, I think everyone should read it? Is it one of those life-changing kind of things, or is it just something resonated in that book for you?
It resonated at a time in my life when I needed some sort of guidance or support or direction, and it helped me continue to ask some questions. And I think I've referred back to it several times. It's quite a mix of things, but it starts from the basis of allegory, which the author then kind of dissects a little bit, perhaps contextualizes in the modern world. So it's quite an interesting way to go into it. The fact that humans have always had story to illustrate experience or parable or understanding, and continue to do so. Writing is really powerful. Imagery is really powerful. I've gone on to read other things, and it's still part of my bookshelf. It's still one that I would recommend out to anybody who has questions or is seeking something, particularly as a woman, because it is written from that perspective a little bit. So it was part of the journey, a really helpful finger pointing at the moon.
Going back to the bit about reframing, I guess, that point where you kind of go, everything I know, everything I've come to know, and timelines are, I'm a big fan of timelines, as I've probably talked to you about, that idea that, things happen over time that probably seem small and insignificant, but cement, and everyone in your life, and everything in your life, and every perception and everything you hear, and all the fear of missing out, and the should we've just talked about should on the last couple of podcasts, create, almost mold, almost like an infrastructure, I guess, a framework. And I guess that point you've talked about in your life, you hit, and I'd imagine it's like the scaffolding just falling down, right? And you are kind of left there, without that framework that you've always known. And that's how I kind of saw it. Is that a fair way of?
I thank you for the description, because that is exactly how it sort of feels, where everything that stood around you, because that actually is what it is. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like it's you when you're in it, but everything that stood around you collapses in a heap, and all you're left with is this sort of being confused because it can no longer see the world as it did. And when we were talking about what perhaps the roads we'd go down when we spoke today, but is that I realized that my sense of self had been formed not by who I am at my center, so what some people might call a spirit or a soul or an essence, not by that, but about what my human existence had led me to believe was either something I should be or something that I am. So whether that's my parents, whether that's my friendship groups, whether that's a social construct or society as a whole, those judgments and preconceptions as to what looking good is, what success is defined by.
Yeah.
And these sort of, and I have this visualization now of all these coats, you're born naked, you're born pure. And as you go through life, someone hands you a pair of gloves or a pair of socks or a necklace or a hat or an overcoat. And over time, you've got so much of other people's stuff.
Yeah.
That it takes some doing to unpeel, to take off the layers, to figure out who is actually exists underneath that. You must be a good daughter, you must contribute to society, you must do it in this way, or that's what we think is good, or definitions of how we should be or what we should expect from ourselves as these things that you require. And then of course all of those things can fall away. So and all it takes is a few of them to go, and you can start to question what I say about me, and do I still want to wear it? What do I want to take with me, and what do I want to shed? And suddenly it becomes about your evolution and growth.
Yeah.
Which is a really exciting concept for me. And I think as individuals, if we're doing that work, we're moving on to something else in a minute. But as individuals, if we're doing that work, we show up differently in the collective, and we move the collective forward. That idea that we're more than just a series of separate individuals. Actually, we are a whole. Something that that's been birthed sort of part the way through this journey and is gaining momentum for me.
That's something we haven't. No, that's I'm sitting here going, that's not on my notes, Joe. That's not in the agenda. But that sounds really exciting. I want to know more. Get some cake in, would you?
Yes, definitely. We need more cake.
I know. That's definitely another couple of slices of carrot cake. Without kind of exhausting the analogy, the coat one I think is brilliant, and the weight of those, one coat is fine, put two on it. Then it starts to get a bit heavy, and which I think is a really good analogy. And I think that also that moment when the clothes kind of fall away, I don't think they actually do. Maybe the weight comes off, or you just realize they're actually there. You don't shed them and just walk off like a brand new person. That's not what happens.
No. Would
you agree? You've still got to then decide which ones are going to go to the charity, which ones you're going to keep, or which ones you might remake into something else.
I think you're absolutely right. The sort of awakening forces you to look, forces you to analyze, and you suddenly become aware of those things. Healing or understanding or discovery happens when you start to do exactly that, where you start to ask yourself where this came from. What is it? Is it serving me? Is it to my better, highest good? When you start to ask those questions and of yourself, you start to ask the questions: where did this coat come from, and do I want to wear it anymore? And it's and that's quite a powerful process, and it takes time. It takes awareness, but once you've turned the switch on, once you've become aware, once you've made the connection, you can't turn it off. So it keeps knocking at your door.
It's new timelines, isn't it? New realities.
You can't not face those things anymore. There might be something there may even be a cardigan that you're holding on to because it's security for you in some way, shape or form. But it's no longer serving you. It's tying you down. It's not allowing you to flourish. It's not allowing you to grow, but you're holding on to it because it's, there's a security in it, or there's fear in your next step, or it is a real deep process, a really deep process of understanding who you are and what you want to be, your choice, your stepping forward, what do you want to have in your life? How do you want to show up? What do you want to experience? Yeah.
What's your thoughts on, I guess, again, timelines? Because everything that's been, we know we're in the we're right in the now, right? We're on the needle of the timeline, right? The frame of reference for what you thought your future was going to be is arguably either in tatters or not there at all. So but of course everybody else is on their own timeline, and the people that are in, bear with me on this, the people that are kind of running parallel or interacting with those timelines, arguably their framework is still the same, largely, although they have a slightly new one because they're reacting to you, for example.
You got it in one.
How do you then decide on, I guess the things to carry on wearing, the things to get rid of, that's the navigation, I guess. I'm not asking you what the answer is, because if you did that, then you could write your own book. You know what I mean? That would, if you could bottle that. incredible. I guess, is there any tools on processing, I guess, because we always like to think about takeaways on this pod, and you've already talked about the things that you do in terms of, I guess, getting in touch, talked about getting in touch with nature and running and outdoor swimming and stuff. There's coping mechanisms or things that just bring you joy, etc. But are there any kind of tools for processing or ways of thinking?
I think it's a great question, Damo, because and I thought it was not a surprise to me that in the lead up to this, or it was maybe serendipitously helpful, is that I've had another wobble, and what I call a wobble, a moment where I leave myself. And I don't feel settled or right. So it's an ongoing process and journey, really. Yeah. How do you know? And I've been forced to, the last few days, revisit some of those sort of scarier places to redefine that for myself. And only this morning I was saying to Dave, I realised that's my husband, long suffering. Bless him. But
big shout out.
Yeah, that was, isn't it? Love him. Yeah. But the only place that you can influence is from your own truth. The only place that you can take the right steps forward for yourself, and therefore everyone around you, is from your own truth and from that own space. So to reacquaint yourself with it, to notice when you're not in it, and to notice when you're triggered either from connections with other people or narratives that exist in other people's narratives, because like you say, everybody's in a different space, in a different time. And so to constantly ask that question, to constantly give yourself the supports that allow you to exist in that space, because that's where your peace of mind is. That's where your calm is. The self-actualization isn't something about running events. It's not about those high points. It's about stillness and coming back to that, and which is why meditation is such a strong anchor for it. And that's not a new thing. It's thousands and thousands of human years old. A process of being in stillness to connect with yourself. And so that's my takeaway. If anyone is to discover who you are and commune with them as your best friend, to commune with them. And I had a great, this is a fairly new thing. I've done a course recently about that rebirth process, about that sort of, what do I want to move forward? What do I want to leave behind? And it's sort of a constant question. It comes up all the time. Yeah. But there was 3 questions in your journaling or writing. And one is what you're grateful for. So it focuses you on what you're joyous about, what fills you up. And when you're in that place of gratitude, you can't be frightened. And that's really powerful, because fear is what jolts you from your center. So what am I grateful for? Right. The other is, what do I want to let go of? So that focuses on you on what you no longer think is to your service, what you want to actually consciously leave from your life, leave behind, move forward from. And the other thing is, what does my soul or my center or my essence want to tell me today?
Wow.
And it sort of acquaints you. You're asking for it to be there. You're asking for yourself to bring its own wisdom to you every day, really. And they're 3 very, very, very powerful. So again, if that was a tool that other people could take away, but that would be it. Know yourself. Acquaint yourself with your best friend. As my son said the other day, he said, Mum, I realised I'm the main character in my own life story.
What a legend.
But he's a start. And it comes out, these young people who have not yet been socialised, who have not yet been given too many coats, too many hats, too many scarves. Yeah. They know it. They are amazing. And we've just got to be honest to listen to them. I love him. He's great. He's my teacher.
Yeah, we were talking about, what age do you get to when you suddenly start, talking about these things. What's he going to be talking about in his late 30s? He'd be just, probably be in touch with the universe by then, wouldn't he?
I sincerely hope so.
Yeah, he'd have been talking to it for years, right? Having a deep conversation with you.
Because their sort of discoveries won't be ours.
No.
That's what we kind of gift. If we're conscious, we're handing the learning that we've gotten by demonstrating a different way of being, so that they can move that forward, so that they can bring in what I hope to be more joy, more gratitude, more kindness, more love, those higher vibrations that mean that we operate in a different space.
So I got a name of those 3 things got a name? Is it a methodology or an approach that has got a name?
Actually, it's one of the people that I've picked up along the way. So along with authors and
Right.
people who are turning up as themselves, they are arriving as themselves, and they are sort of bringing their gifts to the world. And this guy is an energy intuitive.
Wow.
And he's been doing this for 20 years. So this process of understanding who we are and communing with that higher self, that part of ourselves that is always going to make decisions that are to our highest good.
Yeah.
You know, he's been doing that for 20 years.
That's amazing.
I
immediately thought, okay, the gratitude one I hear a lot of, and then you said the next two, and as you said, each one of them they just go up a notch.
Yeah.
I guess with association with the question before, they the power builds, doesn't it, in those three until you get to the end, which is the on their own they're pretty powerful, but then the second one on its own isn't as powerful, without the bit of that gratitude. And then got that emoji, when my head's open and there's a big explosion coming out of it. That's that's what I look like right now. That's mega.
We haven't even touched on quantum physics yet.
But it's only like 10 to 10 on Saturday. People have spent their lives talking about quantum physics.
Well, they've spent their lives talking about it so that we can take the concepts and run with them. I love that. There's no need to relearn everything they've learned. It's an evolution. It's a development. It's taking what makes sense to you and growing that for the next generation. But it's fascinating. It's totally fascinating.
I'm not sure I could tell. I mean, you just drop those three bombs, right? Quantum physics might just be a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's really important. I think when you text me about it, I was like, really? I can barely understand Schrodinger's cat and things being dead or alive at the same time. That's just, almost too much for me. No, it is too much for me. What am I on about? Almost. But
another thing that I came across the other day was pattern interrupt. In order to shake things up, in order to make new discoveries, don't do the same things. And it can be really, really subtle. It can be the fact that actually, instead of having a coffee very first thing, I'm just going to do some yoga stretches instead and then have my coffee. Or I'm going to, it can be really, really small things. It's a really fascinating process. And to understand that there's a degree of manifestation in that. What you're doing is by opening yourself up, by seeking to grow and evolve, we are manifesting what we need to do exactly that.
Yeah.
So we meet the people, and if you're centered, if you're in your center, those connections are both balanced, wholesome, and fruitful.
Yeah.
You don't spend too long when you're in your center. You don't then spend too long in a place that is uncomfortable. You go, there's a no there. That's not for me. That's not where I need to be. I may have a vision of what I want, but I need to find another route. Or has that vision changed? Does what I want to manifest still match what I wanted to manifest yesterday? The future is not set.
Yeah.
We create every moment. That's actually a quote from someone else, but it's true, is that we have a choice every step of the way. I'm privileged in the sense that I have had the time. Or created the time, or whatever, however, made the time for myself to understand certain aspects of myself, which means that I'm in this position to make those judgments that aren't about triggering reaction. They can be a response or a consideration, or what on the balance of things when I collect all these things together, what do I want to do? What is to my highest good? I've got time to think of that. That is a privilege that I would imagine is not for people who are from circumstances that are deeply traumatic. That means that their centers are about survival.
Yeah, I was going to say,
So no, they don't have that. Oh, I'm going to sit here for a moment to meditate on my choices. They're in fight and flight the whole time.
Totally.
So, but we can acknowledge that as a society and help those that can be helped, that want to, that can see their way forward.
Yeah.
And yes, ultimately, there is that personal choice. We can't help people who aren't ready to take that step or journey or don't want to embrace it. And that's everyone in our family, everyone in our society. Ultimately, they are responsible for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this the kind of idea of, you mentioned serendipity, but in the last pod we're talking about, luck and fate and serendipity and determinism, and just what you're saying, just, you can set yourself on a different path. All the things we've been talking about then are about setting new timelines, setting new realities, aren't they?
Yes.
And thinking about the future, it's a bit sounds like Back to the Future. It isn't written yet. The framework we're all used to could be determining your future. If you don't choose to, you don't have to smash it to pieces. You might just want to take a few coats off, You don't have to, this is not about turning lives upside down.
No, it's a bit traumatic
Yeah,
if you do it that way.
I mean, some people are forced into that, or whatever. But I think it's definitely something we want to talk about again, which is the pattern interrupt thing. I think that's really, really interesting. I know, as well as quantum physics, as well as all the other stuff. So we'll talk more on here, and when the government allows, we'll be able to have coffee and cake again.
Hell yeah.
But thanks, that's been lovely. And I've been scribbling down things here, and my mind's just been firing, and want to do more talking. But you got to go, haven't you? You're on a schedule. You're a busy lady.
A busy lady. However, it's been a total privilege to talk to you, and I'm always really humbled when someone creates space, holds space for this kind of conversation. So I feel really honoured, and I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Catch up with you soon, all right? Look after yourself.
Take care, Damo. Lots of love.
Bye.
Did you have carrot cake?
No.
Oh.
Should have done. In that chat, one thing, the thing we kind of got onto at the end, which we didn't think we were going to get into, was when Joe was talking about pattern interrupt. And it kind of resonated because we talked about small steps, we talked about changing habits, talked about streak, we talked about all sorts of things. And we also touched on a couple of episodes about not necessarily what you do, but the things you then don't do. And even things you don't do can interrupt a pattern, a normal pattern, or things you get used to, or getting into either good habits, because you can break good habits as well if you want to. It's not just all about breaking bad habits. And I was looking at, because I hadn't heard of pattern interrupt until this morning when I was chatting to her, so I had a quick look and got very quickly into deconditioning. And deconditioning is a term used to describe a system for diminishing or eliminating the condition responses or behavior patterns that you assume over time, which is kind of big kind of part of the chat we just had. We all develop behaviors and strategies that we run based on our upbringing, past experiences, and what society deems appropriate. In most cases, these patterns are unconscious. You do many of them without even thinking about it. If the behavior pattern is unhealthy, this is where you start to create real problems for yourself, which we've talked about, haven't we? So resorting to behavior patterns that are detrimental can lead to poor health, diminishing self-worth, and an inability to be who you're meant to be. Do the things you're destined to do, and have the things you deserve to have in your life. Continuing to run the same old behaviors can torpedo your relationships, tank your career faster than you can blink, and if you're not paying attention, cause you to give up on yourself and your dreams. So the pattern interrupt comes from NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming, and is a way of changing a person's mental, emotional, or behavioral state or strategy. Developing the skill set for creating a pattern interrupt can help you learn behaviors that lead you powerfully forward towards living a more intentional and passion-filled life. The key ingredient for creating a pattern interrupt and learning new behaviors is awareness. You can't change something if you're not cognizant of the fact that it's happening. We talked about that in that chat with Joe, we're talking about self-actualization. So the first step is becoming aware that you are repeating an unhealthy pattern and to identify what the pattern is. The second step is to observe yourself while you're running the pattern closely enough that you can pinpoint the precise moment where you derail. This is a critical piece because it's in that moment where you need to now install a new behavior. Then you need to practice it diligently over and over again until it becomes a new habit.
The more I practice, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
So is the interruption looking at maybe things that you do by rote, and actually that if you have more recognition or more cognition of why you're doing things, that you can then go,
yeah, exactly what you said.
Is this the best thing for me?
It's that self-actualization, is it? It's literally kind of almost waking up from a slumber, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
The pattern is so regular. There's no reason there's nothing to kind of make you stop if it's not detrimental to your health.
Yeah.
But it can be, can't it? But if you don't recognize it to realize it, to stop it, or realize it to start it, I think that's the important bit. Yeah, as you've already said. You haven't taken your jumper off yet. I was looking forward to that.
I'm only not doing it because someone did make the number of references that you make that are borderline. I'm not going to say because Wayne would get embarrassed.
Oh, right. What? But
well, he said if you were new to the pod and you listened, you might think you've come into some sort of
what?
I don't know.
What? Homoerotic
innuendo fest.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I've come right. What? What's wrong, right? Someone like you who likes affirmation, likes kind of people complimenting you on your body, right? I'm doing just that. So what's the problem?
I just think I get.
I'm not getting aroused.
Move on.
I'm enjoying it, but I'm not like, ooh, am I? It's hardly that.
Baby oil, like. Come on, move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a bit of an apology, haven't I? I think I swore.
I
swore at at Russian Spy.
You'll be off to the gulag.
Yeah, because you said someone didn't like my intros. You wouldn't say me who, and I swore in response.
Yeah,
and then at the end you revealed who that was, and I was like, oh. I'll just disappear one of these days, won't I? Without a trace.
Yeah.
Hello, Russian Spy. Big fan. That's it for this episode. Well done for getting this far, and thanks for listening. Give us a follow on Instagram and Twitter at I'mFinecast, and send your feedback and ideas to imfinecast@gmail.com. In the next episode. So, does truth exist, Mark? Really, truly? So we'll be looking at the truth.
Can you believe what I'm going to tell you?
Yeah, we'll be looking at the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's it. Thank you.
Good night.